open the presentation and we'll start. So today we are going to discuss basically it's the last story before the revelation, the actual revelation starts, and that's the story of Zayd ibn Haritha, who is the slave of Khadija, and then he was gifted to Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and then Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam later on adopted him. So we'll go into the detail of the whole thing, how it happened. So Zayd ibn Haritha is basically from Yemen. So he's an Arab, but he's not a Qurayshi. So he's from one of the tribes of Yemen, and his father and mother, they were from two different tribes. So the tribes of Zayd's father and Zayd's mother, they had a love-hate relationship. So at times they were very good friends, and at times they are at war. So they had some relationships in between the two tribes, but they were also at war with each other a lot as well. So Zayd's mother, whose name was Seerah, so once she took Zayd to her parents' house, so she went back to her own tribe, took Zayd, who's the son, with her, and while she was there, the war or the fight broke between the two tribes. So Zayd's father tribe and Zayd's mother tribe. So the war broke between the two tribes. And to take the revenge from Zayd's father, who's Haritha, to take the revenge from Haritha, Zayd's mother tribe kidnapped Zayd and sold it, because everything comes from the father. In their time, in their kind of tradition, everything was father's. So the son is father's son. Although they are basically kidnapping their own nephew, because that's their sister, that's their own tribeswoman,
Yeah.
and they're kidnapping her child, but for them they are actually taking a revenge from the father. And in that hatred, and that's basically what the Jahiliyyah was, so all the tribal mentality. So they kidnapped basically their own sister's son and sold him in one of the slave markets. Can you give me one of the cakes? So that's what they did. And I mean, so that's what they did. And they, in terms of, there was a big marketplace called the Market of Uqas, or the Fairs of Uqas, which was held outside the Mecca. And as you know, we have discussed that many times, that Mecca was like a central place where everybody was coming to buy and sell. And there was a big marketplace called Market of Uqas. So that's where they were selling all these slaves.
So they took him from Yemen.
And they brought him to
Saudi.
Yeah, so they brought him to Mecca. Yeah, there was not Saudi Arabia at that time. Arabic Peninsula, yeah. It wasn't Saudi Arabia at that time. It was just Mecca. So they brought him to Mecca, and they sold him in the fairs of Uqas. And Khadija at that time, she needed a slave. She sent her nephew, Khadija's nephew, whose name was Hakim ibn Hizam. So she asked Hakim, why don't you go and find me a slave, because I need a slave for housework, for the household work. So he went and he found Zayd, who was being sold in the Pharaoh for cars. He bought Zayd and brought and gave it to Khadija. And so he became Khadija's slave. And then when Khadija married Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, she gifted Zayd to Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So that's how he became Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's slave. But Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam never actually treated him like a slave. So he treated him like his own son. So there was a proper fatherly love for Zayd. And I mean, this Zayd's father was obviously looking for him everywhere, and once he actually somebody from Yemen came to Mecca. A few years has passed by, and somebody came from Yemen to Mecca, and he saw Zayd, and he said, "Oh, he looks like the person from that tribe," and he knew that tribe's one of the tribe's men, Haritha, he's lost his son and he's been looking for his son. So he straight away realized that this is actually Zayd, whose father has been looking for him. So he went back and he told Haritha that, "Look, I've found Zayd. He's in such and such place. He's one of the sons of Abdul Muttalib, so he's with him. Why don't you go and get him?" So he was very happy. He took his brother, gathered all the money which he could find, came and met Prophet ﷺ and said, "Oh, Ibn al-Abdul Muttalib," and they were always called Ibn Abdul Muttalib. As you remember, I've said it so many times that Abdul Muttalib is the legend there. So everybody would ascribe them from Abdul Muttalib. Although he's not son of Abdul Muttalib, he's the grandson of Abdul Muttalib. That, "Oh, son of Abdul Muttalib, we have found that you have got my son, and we know that you are a noble man," and they really praised him. "You are a very noble man, and you are from one of the elites of the Quraysh, and we are here to get our son, and we are happy to pay whatever you want us to pay, but be generous with us. I mean, don't ask for a price which we can't pay. Be generous with us." He said, "Well, if that's what you want, then you don't need to pay anything. If you are just here to get your son, you don't have to pay anything. I will give it to you. But it's his choice, his Zayd's choice. So we'll ask Zayd, if he wants to go with you, you don't have to pay me anything. You can take him. But if he says no, I will never be able to say no to a person who has chosen me. So if Zayd says, no, I'm not going, then I can't give it to you, basically." So father was very happy. He said, "You have done marvelously. We can't ask him anything more than that." They were sure that the Zayd will come and they will choose us and they will go. Zayd came, and the father said, "Come on, Zayd." The Prophet ﷺ said, "Do you know these guys?" And he said, "Yes, he's my father and he's my uncle." And he said, so Prophet ﷺ said that they are here to take you back home, and if you wish to go with them, then you are free to go. But if you wish to stay with me, then you are free to stay. And I would never say no if you choose me. And Zayd said to the father that this man, Muhammad, because he was not the Prophet ﷺ at that time. So we have to remember that he's not even a prophet at that time. So there is no love of prophet. It was just a man who is so nice to his slave that he said, "This man Muhammad is more than a father and an uncle combined. So I'm not going to go with you. I'm going to stay with him. I can never say leave Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam." He's not prophet at the time, but he said, "I can never leave this man." And the father was really shocked and was like, "Are you mad? You want to stay slave while you are actually free, and you can be free and we can go back to your own tribe, but you want to remain like a slave here?" But he said, no, I'm not going to go back. When Prophet ﷺ saw that his father is really upset about him not going with me, and he's still upset that my son is a slave, he took his hand, went out, and in the Kaaba, because that's where they used to, the Nadi, you remember the parliament which they had, so that's where they used to announce everything. So he took him to Kaaba and announced that, oh, people of Quraysh, this is Zayd, and I'm adopting him, and from today onwards, he's Zayd ibn Muhammad, and I will inherit from him, and he will inherit from me. Like your son, you will inherit with your biological son.
Okay.
So father will inherit from his.
Which isn't the practice now.
No, you will inherit. The father
No,
will
no,
have
I'm saying
been
adopted children. Can't
adopted.
inherit.
No, not at the moment. So that Allah abolish it later on.
Okay.
The naming. To name his your son is haram.
Yeah.
But to look after him as a foster parent.
Yeah, as a foster parent,
No,
you can
but
allow.
on those 2
Inheritance,
points, you're
no.
obviously correct, which is you can't adopt the name,
You can't give him your name.
Name.
and you can't.
In-
He can't inherit from you either.
You leave a will.
Pledge, yeah.
You
can
can
leave
pledge,
You can pledge. You can leave a will,
but he can't inherit as your other children.
no. So not as a brother, a relative. He can't. But I mean, at that time, your adopted son is like your son. So, so he said that to actually make the father at a bit ease that he's been adopted and he's not a slave anymore. So father was happy. He went back. Obviously, he was sad that the son didn't come with him, but at least he was happy. He was content that he's not a slave. He's been adopted by one of the chieftain, one of the noblemen of Quraysh. And then when he was actually the slave, he married Ayman, who was one of the servants of Amina. Yes, servants of Amina. And they had a son with the name of Usama. And Usama basically was born in the household of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and he grew up. He was a little kid, and he grew up, and Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam really loved him. He used to be known as, so how much he loved Zayd and his family is that, I mean, Usama was known as Hibbun Nabi wa Ibn Hibbun Nabi. So he's the love of Prophet, and he's the son of the love of Prophet. So that's showing the status of Zayd. And once in the time of Umar radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu, when he was Khalifa, Abu Bakr had a kind of a way that he gave stipend to all the Sahaba, equal stipend. So everybody will get the same pay. All the Sahaba will get the same stipend, same pay. But Umar radhiyallahu ta'ala anhu said, no, that can't be right. So the people who accepted Islam the earliest will get the maximum pay, then second degree, then category C and category D and category. And I mean, subhanallah, he himself was not amongst the first ones, so he was getting category C, category D pay himself because he was quite late in accepting Islam. And Bilal and all the others, who were the slaves of Quraysh, they were getting much higher pay than himself. So he said to his son, Ibn Umar, he said that me and Usama, we are at the same age, and why my salary is so low and Usama's salary is so high? Listen to the answer. He said, because Usama was more beloved to the Prophet than you are, and Usama's father was more beloved to the Prophet than your father is. So, because Zayd was more beloved, so that's why he's going to get more salary. So forget about having more salary. So he told his son. Zayd is the only Sahabi who's been mentioned in Quran by name. Okay, so Zayd is being mentioned in the Quran in Surah 33, Ayah 37. Zayd was married to Ayman, as we said, and then when he kind of adopted him to remove all the kind of stigma of slavery from Zayd. Prophet ﷺ actually encouraged him to marry his own cousin, which is Zainab radiallahu anha, so that there is no stigma attached to him of slavery anymore. So he married, the second woman was Zainab, who was the cousin of Prophet ﷺ. And then later on, their marriage couldn't carry on. It was not as successful, and there was a divorce. And then Prophet ﷺ actually married Zainab, and she is one of our mothers. Ibn Shahab az-Zuhri said that Zayd was the first person to accept Islam. But there's a lot of firsts to accept Islam. So how do we reconcile that? So Zayd was the first Mawla. So Mawla is the term which is for the freed slave. So the freed slave used to called Mawla. Okay, so like the Maulana, the term Maulana. So Maulana is our Mawla. Na is for our use. So Mawla means protector. So they were freed slaves, and but they would still help their masters. Although they are freed, but they would still have some alliance with their masters, affiliation. There some alliance with their masters. So they were like the protectors for them. So that's why they were called Mawlas, and from the same word, actually, Maulana is from the same word which we use.
Say Mawla Allah?
Yeah, because he is our protector. So that's the same word. So Mawla is the same word. Mawla basically means protector. Your protector, your savior. Not the savior, but protector.
Wala.
From Wala, yeah, from Walaya and Wala, a friend.
Affiliate.
So he was the first Mawla who accepted Islam. Khadija was the first woman who accepted Islam. Waraka ibn Nawfal was the first elderly who accepted Islam. Abu Bakr was the first young man who accepted and Ali was the first child who accepted Islam. So they kind of made it everybody first.
Was Waraka ibn Nawfal the one who, like Khadija's uncle?
Yeah. So
Cousin.
Khadija's cousin, sorry, yes, not uncle, but he was an elder, but he was cousin, yes, 40-year-old elder, but cousin. So there's a lot of narrations about Zayd. Zayd actually was in about 10 different ghazawat, and there is no ghazawa which Zayd was participating and he was not the in charge. So every time Zayd went on a war, he was the in charge of the army. Okay, not all ghazawat, because whenever it was a ghazawa, Prophet ﷺ was in charge himself. I'm talking about the Siriyat.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
So whenever there was Zayd was involved in a war, he was the in charge. And in Mota, which is one of the last wars before Prophet ﷺ died, he was again the in charge. And there was Prophet ﷺ said, Zayd is your in charge. If he dies, then the Jafar will be the second one. And if he dies, is it Abdurrahman bin Auf? Rawaha, yeah, Abdullah bin Rawaha, yeah, Jafar, and then Abdullah bin Rawaha. So he was the third one. And I mean, it's been narrated that Jafar, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he was a little bit, I'm trying to find the right word, was not like angry, but he was like, that why didn't you, I was expecting that you will give me the the charge because I'm a Qurayshi, I'm your cousin, and all of
There
that.
was an expectation.
Yeah, it was an expectation. And Prophet ﷺ was really angry with him that, don't you know that Zayd is more beloved in the eyes of Allah and His Prophet than you, and how can you say that? And then he understood and he repented, Jafar, straight away. But I mean, Zayd was always in charge. So, and there's some of the Sahaba said that if Zayd would have been alive when Prophet ﷺ passed away, he would have been the Khalifa. So that was understanding of some of the Sahaba, but he had passed away already by that time. So there's a lot of blessings about Zayd. So he was, and then Ibn Umar, when the ayah came which says it's better to call them with their father's name, and that's when Zayd name was changed back to his father's name, Zayd ibn Haritha. Up till then, Ibn Umar, who's the son of Umar, he said that we.
Okay, just Zayd, when he went to that Mu'tah war, the Prophet said if Zayd died, then
Ja'far.
Abdullah ibn Rawha died, then Ja'far. And a Jew came to Zayd and he said to him, if the Prophet said, if he dies, then so and so. If he dies, so and so. He said, you're definitely going to die. So you better not go. And he said, I love it. I really desperate to
Go. Yeah, I mean, he wants to be a shaheed. I can't remember what was I just talking about.
Naming.
Oh yes, Ibn Umar said that we never knew Zayd for any other name than Zayd ibn Muhammad. So when he was renamed, when he was reverted back to Zayd ibn Haritha, they were all shocked that, oh, he's not the actual son. They all thought that he's actually the son of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Was that when the ruling came out that you couldn't actually give your name to?
Yeah, to your adopted
you can't
children.
adopt, basically.
No, you can adopt. You can't give them your name. You can still adopt a child.
Yeah.
You can't give them your name.
Oh, so you can adopt?
Yeah, you
I
can.
thought you weren't allowed to
No,
adopt.
you can still adopt with certain conditions. That obviously, if there's a female you are adopting, she won't be your mahram.
Yeah.
So when she grows up, you have to follow that rule of mahram, non-mahram, and all of those things. And if you're adopting a son, unless your wife has breastfed the son, he will not be a mahram to your wife or your other kids if you have got other females.
Yeah.
So they don't become blood relatives. You can look after them.
Yeah.
You can care them, foster care them, everything. Yeah, you have to. Yeah, you have to put hijab and all of those
One
things.
of the things in Britain, because they were adopting, giving them their names, they grow up thinking they are their real children. When they discover that they are not, they start thinking, oh, this is why he was hitting me, this is why he wouldn't buy me this and this and this. Became their enemies. So the government now insisted that children must know that they are not their real children. So they know that they are generous and they were kind to adopt them. Because this is why the Quran came. He said, call them with their own father's name. Yeah, and then, and subhanAllah, this country followed the Quran
1400 years later.
But after they had so many troubles.
Troubles.
Yeah.
I mean, always, alhamdulillah, there's always some benefit from what you can see from Quran, because obviously it's a divine revelation. Allah knows us better than we do. So that's the story of Zayd.
So there's always those people who want to attack Islam, they always talk about the Prophet who married his wife. But obviously now,
yeah, I mean,
you
that's,
find out it's his second wife, it wasn't his first wife.
yeah, and there's a I mean, it's one of those sensitive topics which needs academic discussion, frank academic discussion. But it is one of those sensitive issues which non-Muslims actually take and they use it a lot. and we inshallah we will discuss. I don't want to jump into that just now. We will discuss it in detail, inshallah. And we'll have to discuss it openly and academically. So there's nothing wrong in the story. What the non-Muslims have made it into like a love story and all of those kind of things, and satanic verses is basically the basis of satanic verses. Rushdie's whole book is on this story, but that's all lies. So it's not the case what they have written.
And ultimately, it's his cousin who's getting divorced, who he put forward to marry.
Allah married them.
Yeah, yeah.
There was no nikah. Allah married them in the Quran. So it's a direct revelation from direct order from the Allah. So nobody could say no to what Allah has ordered them. So it's a direct order from the Allah. So there is no way Prophet ﷺ would say no. I mean, as I said, we will discuss in detail. He tried to actually keep the marriage going, basically, initially. But we will discuss that in detail, inshallah.
The problem with the Orientalists that and people who don't know Arabic, even some people who know Arabic, they misinterpret the Arabic deliberately. So the ayah, which this will come later, the ayah by itself explained it wasn't Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There were no love or anything. He actually married his own cousin to Zaynab, to Zayd.
Yeah.
Although Zaynab wasn't keen, but the marriage didn't succeed and failed. So obviously Allah Azza wa Jal wanted Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to first honor his cousin, and secondly he wanted to remove that habit of adopting and making him your real son. If he was your real son, you cannot marry his wife. So to make it really a shaking change, he made him marry Zainab. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not a need for any woman. There's a lot of women came to him and he said no, because he have that privilege that any woman can offer herself to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he has to say yes or no, and he rejected many of them. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
So it means as we discussed last time when we were reading the story of Khadija, that when Khadija was alive, she was the only wife, and after that, basically when Khadija passed away and he had daughters and he had to look after his daughters, and also to look after himself, he needed a wife. And somebody mentioned, why don't you get married? I can't remember who did that. One of the females, she mentioned, why don't you get married? And he said, have you got somebody in your mind? And he said, yeah, there's an elderly female and there's a young female, which I've got in my mind. So Prophet said, okay, ask them both. Whoever says yes, because he wasn't sure who's going to say yes. So he said, okay, you can go and ask them. And the elderly lady was Sauda, who was quite an elderly lady, one of our mothers, Sauda Razil Talana. And the young girl was Aisha. So she took the proposal to both of them, and both of them said yes. So when they have said yes, actually Prophet ﷺ, according to the custom, couldn't have said no to one of them. He had to accept both, because he proposed and they said yes. He can't say no, because it would be a big humiliation for them.
Simultaneously,
Yeah.
If he'd wanted to, he should have done it separately.
Yeah. So and then he married those two. And after that, all the marriages, there was some political basis to it. There was some other reason other than just getting married. So these are the three marriages which he married just for the sake of marriage. But after that, pretty much all the marriages have other reasons other than just marrying a woman. So there was some political reasons, like in the case of Zainab, he wanted to abolish that practice of making the sons your actual sons. So that's just pretty much basically just the last story, and now we will go to the actual revelation of the Quran. So what age was that? Anyone?
40?
40. Yeah, he was 40 years old. Just before the actual revelation started, in the last 6 months, before the revelation started, there's a phenomenon which started that he would start seeing these dreams, and every night he will see a dream, and the next morning that will come true. So it will be exactly what he saw in the dream. So it was like on daily basis. So he started seeing the dreams, and the next morning they will come true. So this is what happened for the first 6 months. And then he started noticing that the rocks were saying salam to him, and later on he said that I can still recognize the one special rock who used to say salam. And then he started going to Hira for longer and longer period of time for seclusion and for ibadah. And he would go and would stay days on end in Hira, and then when he will run out of food, and then he will come back, stay for a few days to sort out the family affairs, and then we'll have some more provisions, and we'll go back and we'll spend more time in Hira.
So he was like meditating.
Yeah, he was meditating, he was contemplating, he was thinking. So that's basically what he was doing. So, and he was so Ghar Hira actually was not discovered by Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It's narrated that Ghar Hira was discovered by Abdul Muttalib, and he used to go and spend some time there and contemplate and kind of meditate in Ghar Hira. So that's how Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam knew about it, and then he started doing that himself. So the first 6 months it was all just true dreams. And there's a hadith, can't remember which book is it, which says that the prophethood is stopped, is finished with me. The only thing from the prophethood is the only thing which is left from the prophecy is the true dreams, and it's 1/46th of the prophethood. A true dream is 1/46th of the prophethood.
Yeah. It's a hadith.
Yeah. So anybody can tell me who, except Dr. Khanam, because I know he knows. What does that mean? How is 1/46th? 1/46th.
Yeah.
So it's 1/46th of prophethood.
If there's a prize,
Hmm?
if there is a prize, then
There's a prize,
why
yes,
not
they
include
can
it?
have an extra cake from there.
I haven't had the first cake yet.
Is it literally saying it's a very small fraction, that there are many elements to being a prophet?
No, actually it's an exact
Oh, right.
scientific answer to it. So I'll tell you. So how long he was prophet for?
28 years.
Not 28.
13.
So 13 in Mecca and 10 in Medina. So 23 years. And 6 months of the true is half.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
so if you
1/46.
divide, it becomes 1/46. Make sense? Or I have confused you more?
No, makes sense.
So 6 months is 0.5 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you divide that with 23, it will be 1/46.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for 6 months he was seeing true dreams, and that's the hadith kind of says to. So the hadith says the true dream is 1/46th
Yeah.
of the
At
prophethood.
the time that he was prophet.
Yeah. So that's what. So the true dream is. So that's what he was getting. So there's a long hadith which is narrated by Aisha Radhiyallahu Ta'ala anha, that the angel came to him at one day when he was in the Ghar Hira. In fact, there is a narration in Ibn Hisham. It says that on what day was the revelation? We know, we have talked about it. Monday. You remember we talked about
Yeah.
that Monday, he was fasting Monday because that's the day when he was born and that's the day when the Quran was revealed to him. So on one Saturday, he saw a bright, when he was in Ghar Hira, he saw a bright light and he heard noise and he looked everywhere and couldn't see anything. So he continued with his meditation, and then on Sunday he saw the same thing. He saw a bright light and he heard a loud noise and he looked around and he couldn't find anybody. And on Monday, the angel came, the Jibreel came, and he saw Prophet and he squeezed him. And the narration says that he squeezed him so tight that his whole energy was drained. Like you almost suffocated. He almost thought that I'm going to die. And then said, Iqra. And Prophet ﷺ said be used for read, and Iqra could also be used to like read from a book or to recite. So from your heart. So now I'm saying something, this is Iqra as well. And if I read from a book, this is Iqra as well. So the both things are Iqra. So when the angel says Iqra, Prophet ﷺ thought of he's asking me to read from a book. But we know that he was not lettered. He couldn't read and write. So he said, La ana biqari. Or ma ana biqari. I can't remember. Yeah, ma ana biqari. I'm not a reader. I can't read. And then he squeezed him again, second time, and then he said, Iqra. And Prophet ﷺ said again, Ma ana biqari. And then he squeezed him third time, and he said the same thing. And then he said, Iqra, Iqra wa bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, Iqra wa rabbuka al-akram, alladhi allama bil qalam, allama al-insana ma lam ya'lam. So, first 5 ayahs of Surah Alaq. So basically, he said, Iqra, he was saying, read by the name of Allah, and then he completed the whole thing. So, he was squeezed 3 times. Why was he squeezed 3 times? Any guesses? Anybody knows anything? I mean, to be honest, we can't be sure why he did that. We cannot be 100% sure. So people have guessed and have kind of discussed the answers and they have thought about it. So some scholars said that he was squeezed to make sure, to tell Prophet ﷺ that he's not dreaming. It's not he is imagining. So if we think about something and we think we are dreaming, what do? Pinch ourselves, okay? So that squeezing is to make sure that he's awake and he's getting this message. So the other scholar said that he was squeezed to say 3 times he was squeezed to tell that he would have 3. In fact, the second is to tell him that he will get a heavy message. That message is not going to be easy. It's going to be very heavy. And it's in Quran, it says that we have given you a heavy message. Thaqila. Qawlan saqila, yeah. So that's the word which is used. Qawlan saqila, so heavy message. And as we will discuss later on, inshallah, that it was physically painful for him to actually get the wahi. It was physically painful for him when he was getting the wahi. There's a narration that one of the Sahabi, he was sitting and Prophet ﷺ was lying with his head on the thigh of the Sahabi. He was resting with his head on his, and suddenly he started getting the wahi, and the Sahabi said that I started feeling the weight, and it was so heavy that I thought my thigh bone is going to crack. So it was so heavy when he started getting the wahi. So it was physically painful for him.
Also narrations of when he was receiving the revelation while he was on the
camel and the camel sat down. Yeah. So, and he will definitely he will get the sweat, and I mean there was some physical kind of things which you could see that he's getting wahi, and it is difficult for him to receive the wahi. The third thing is that it says that the third three squeezes actually specify that he will get three difficulties in his life, three major difficulties in his life, and one of them, can I want to mention? What could be those three, Dr. Khanna? What would you guess? Which three?
I never knew about this.
Yeah, but it means which would be you think that the three big
I
difficulties?
never heard about this.
Loss
I
of
never
his
thought-
son.
Losing Khadija radiallahu anha.
Yeah.
Exile from Makkah.
Sorry?
Exile from Makkah.
From Makkah, yeah. And I mean, the scholars they have mentioned about the Shaib Abi Talib, the boycott. So that's one of them, because they almost eked out their existence by eating leaves and things like that, and it was for so long. And the second one was the major assassination attempt during the Hijrah, and the whole Hijrah, when he was he did the Hijrah from Mecca to Medina, and there was assassination. So Allah saved him many a times. And the third one was Uhud, when he was injured, and he was all surrounded by the kuffar, and there were very few Sahaba, and one of the Sahabi, which I think it was Saad, who was throwing arrows, and Prophet ﷺ was giving him the arrows, and then he said, Fadaka Abi wa Ummi Ya Saad. So he's the only Sahabi who Prophet ﷺ said that. Lots of Sahaba said that to Prophet ﷺ. May our mother and father be given in ransom for you. So that's what it means. But Prophet ﷺ used it only once for the Sahabi, and that was, I think his name was Saad, and he was
Saad or Said, no,
yeah, and he was on the top of the mountain, and he was throwing the arrows, and because there were lots of people who were trying to come up on, so it was a really difficult time for him. So those are the three which the scholars have mentioned.
However, as you're saying, it's conjecture. There's no.
No,
It's unknown to us.
yeah, we don't know. So it's only people have tried to make sense of it, but we don't know for sure.
Where was
Because,
this,
sorry,
so in terms of the revelation, where was the script written? Was it written?
no, it was just the oral.
So it's,
because-
so it's by voice.
yeah,
so that was it.
yeah. Because you remember Prophet ﷺ can't read,
Give it on the table.
so he can't read, so it can't be a written thing. So Jibreel used to take it and teach him, and then he will teach the Sahaba. So it's just a start, but I think I'll just finish. I've just touched it, but we'll go into the more detail exactly what happened, because it's almost 9 o'clock now. In fact, it is 9 o'clock. So we'll stop here, inshallah, and then we will take it from here next week. May Allah protect us and try and get benefit from what we have read. Jazakumullah khair for coming. Inshallah, we'll